Mama always said, when a man follows pleasure blindly, shame will show him the way back home. I used to laugh whenever she said that, thinking it was one of those old-fashioned warnings meant to scare young men from chasing women. But life, I learned, doesn't shout before teaching its lessons, it whispers. And if you don't listen, it roars. My name is David, and this is the story of how one foolish night of pride, lust, and carelessness changed my life forever. I was 26, a construction worker in Port Harcourt. The days were long, the sun was cruel, and our reward was the same sweat, dust, and 45 at the end of 3 weeks. That Friday, our supervisor shared our pay, and my friend's eyes lit up like firecrackers. "David, no start that your holy boy talk tonight, said Jide, laughing as he pocketed his cash. "Guy a bag, make I just rest," I replied. "Resky, no be every day men they get fresh money. We day go Casablanca tonight, enjoyment full ground." Their laughter was loud, intoxicating. Even the evening breeze seemed to carry mischief. At first, I resisted, but peer pressure is like a sweet perfume, it smells harmless until it chokes you. By 9 p.m., I was in a taxi, heading toward Casablanca, where lights glowed red and the air smelled of sin. That was the night everything changed. The street throbbed with live music, laughter, and the cries of hustlers. The scent of roasted suya mixed with beer and perfume thick enough to drown an angel. "Fine boy, come now, I go treat you well tonight," one woman called. Another brushed her hand across my shoulder. "You go enjoy past heaven." Then I saw her, the woman who would become the face of my downfall. She sat under a red umbrella stand, her red gown hugging her curves, her hair falling over one eye like a secret. Her gaze met mine and held it steady, dangerous, magnetic. "Why you day look me like that?" she asked, smiling faintly. "I'm just looking," I managed to say. "You go just day look, or will you follow me to my room?" My friends roared behind me.
"David, now your turn. Oh, I follow her, sharp guy."
I hesitated, but pride and lust drowned my sense. I followed her. Cynthia's room was dim, painted in weak blue light. The fan hummed like a tired insect. The air was thick perfume, sweat, and faded gin. She handed me a drink. "Relax, fine boy. You look too innocent." I forced a smile. "I'm not." She laughed softly. "Nobody be saint for the city." We talked. She told me about life, about betrayal, about dreams that died too early. I pretended to listen, but truthfully, I was lost in the scent of her skin. When she touched my cheek, reason packed its bags and left. I didn't think about protection. I didn't think about consequences. That night, I became a fool, a willing fool. When it was over, she smiled lazily. "No, forget me." But I did, until my own skin refused to forget. It began 3 days later, a small, innocent itch around my waistline. By the 4th day, my skin was on fire. Red spots crawled across his body like angry ants, spreading to his thighs and arms. He tried to ignore it. He told himself it was heat rash, maybe the weather, maybe the dirty bed sheet from that cheap brothel. But deep down, fear had started whispering. By the 4th day, the whispers became screams. He couldn't sleep, couldn't sit, couldn't work. The itching mocked him every hour of the day. When he bathed, it stung. When he scratched, it spread. At work, Jide noticed first. "Guy, wet into your body?" he asked, peering at the red patches climbing David's neck. "Nothing," David muttered, trying to pull his shirt collar up. "Nothing, Key? Your neck done red like pepper soup." Tega laughed. "You sure say no be Casablanca doings?" They burst into laughter, but David didn't laugh. Shame tightened around his throat. That evening, he couldn't take it anymore. He went straight to the general hospital at mile 1. The waiting room smelled of disinfectant and worry. People coughed, babies cried, and nurses moved briskly from one desk to another. When it was finally his turn, the nurse glanced briefly at his skin and scribbled something on a small paper. "Go to the lab," she said flatly. At the lab, the technician barely looked at him. "Remove your shirt." David obeyed. Under the harsh white light, his body looked like a battlefield, red bumps, dry patches, some areas already beginning to peel. The technician sighed. "This one no be heat rash. You go need test for infection." David swallowed hard. "Which kind infection?" The man shrugged. "We go know when result come out. But make I talk true, most times way we see this kind rash for young men. They linked to STI, sexually transmitted infection. David's heart sank. He remembered that night, the dim room, the red dress, the careless laughter, the foolish pride that made him say, "I'm not innocent." Now, the price had come. The nurse later handed him some drugs and a small brown envelope. "Your test go be ready next week. For now, rub this cream morning and night. And no scratch again. You hear?" He nodded quietly, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt in his life. When he got home, his friends were sitting outside, drinking beer. The moment they saw him, they started joking again. "Dr. David Don come back," Jide teased. "How Madam Cynthia body?" David forced a smile and said nothing. He didn't have the strength to explain. But later that night, as he lay on his bed scratching and staring at the ceiling, he realized something. The laughter that used to excite him now sounded foolish, empty. He thought about the 45. Oh, he earned every 3 weeks. Half of it was already gone: hospital bills, drugs, transport. All for one night. One night that brought more pain than pleasure. Days passed. The rashes began to fade, but the shame didn't. Every time he saw a woman dressed in red, his stomach turned. Sometimes he imagined Cynthia's voice whispering, "You go just look, or you go follow me, go my room." He'd shake his head quickly, trying to silence the memory. But the truth had already bitten deep. He had been foolish, careless, and blind. He wasn't the same David anymore. Something inside him had changed. And though the itching on his skin began to heal, another kind of itch, the one inside his heart, refused to fade. It was the itch of regret. Weeks passed. David's skin finally cleared, but his heart didn't. Every time he looked in the mirror, he saw more than just his reflection. He saw a man who had learned a bitter lesson the hard way. The hospital visits, the embarrassment of undressing before strangers, the look on the nurse's face when she said, "Go do STI test." Those moments stayed with him like scars that didn't show on the skin. He started avoiding his old friends. No more beer parlor nights. No more late Friday hangouts. No more Rumuola stories. Instead, he spent evenings sitting outside his room, listening to the sound of faraway traffic and thinking about his life. But in Nigeria, change is suspicious. The moment a man stops following the crowd, people start whispering. One Saturday evening, his friends gathered outside the compound as usual. The smell of roasted fish filled the air. Someone played Burna Boy's song from a small Bluetooth speaker, and laughter floated through the night. David stepped out quietly, holding his cup of gari and groundnut. "Ah, see who we dey talk about," Jide shouted. Brother David Don finally show face. "I beg come join us, Jer," Tega added, handing him a cold bottle of beer. "Forget all this serious look. Life no hard like that." David smiled faintly and shook his head. "I don't stop that one." "Stop wedding?" Jide frowned. "The drinking, the brothel runs, all of it." For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then laughter erupted like fireworks. David Don turned past her. Emma mocked. "Not only small crocra make you holy like this?" David looked at them calmly. "If not only crocra I get that night, I for thank God. Some people know they lucky reach me." Tega leaned forward. "You still they talk that Cynthia matter? I beg, forget am. That woman fine die. If no be you chop first, I for collect my share." David's eyes hardened. "Tega, that woman almost ruined my life. You think say not joke? You know see wedding I go through. I nearly mad. The hospital, the test, the shame, all for one useless night." Jide raised his beer bottle and laughed. "You too fear. Street no be for small boys." David sighed deeply. "You dey call am street. I call am graveyard. Many men enter there. Dem no come back same. You dey see only the music, the drinks, the red light, you know they see the pain way hide behind am." Silence fell briefly. The music kept playing, but the laughter faded. For a moment, his words sank in. "But pride is a stubborn companion. Guy, I beg, free us," Tega said finally. "We no go carry disease. We saw be the game, not protection we dey use." David looked at him sadly. "Protection no fit guard your destiny." They chuckled again, brushing off his warning, and changed the topic. But as David stood up to leave, he looked back at them, 3 men he had known for years. Men who thought they were untouchable. He wanted to say more, to plead with them, to shake them until they understood. But he didn't. Because sometimes, Words can't save a man until pain does. Later that night, as he lay on his bed, he heard their laughter drifting from outside. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "They don't know what's coming." He didn't know that those would be the last nights his friends would ever laugh freely again, because the road of pleasure they followed was already waiting to swallow them, whole and merciless. It was a Friday night, humid, noisy, and restless. The kind of night Port Harcourt wears like perfume. The smell of roasted meat, the sound of laughter, the flashing of colored bulbs, everything screamed enjoyment. David stayed home that evening. He sat by his small window, watching the moon hide behind the clouds. His friends had invited him again, Jide, Tega, and Emma. "Guy, no doll, not Friday," Tega had said, tapping his shoulder. But David only smiled and replied, "I don't hang my boots." They laughed and left, their perfume and foolish pride lingering in the air. By 10:30 p.m., Rumuola Street was alive. The red lights glowed brighter than ever. Music pumped from cheap speakers, and half-dressed women called out to passing men. Inside the brothel, the air was thick cigarette smoke, perfume, and sweat mixing into a single, choking cloud. Tega, Jide, and Emma sat at a small plastic table in one corner. Bottles of beer lined before them. They laughed loudly, telling stories of work, money, and women. Everything looked normal until chaos walked in. It started with a shout. Two men burst through the entrance, arguing violently. One had dreadlocks, the other wore a black bandana. Both were regular faces, known cult boys who came to the brothel often. "You dey craze. Nami hold the gun, Nami shoot. So why I go collect small share? Now we plan the robbery together. No try cheat me." Their voices grew louder. People paused. The DJ turned down the music slightly, thinking it was just another drunken quarrel. But then came the sound everyone feared, a slap. One heavy, loud, and final. In a heartbeat, tables flipped. Bottles smashed. The room exploded into chaos. Women screamed. Men ducked. Chairs flew across the room. Then came the first gunshot, sharp, deafening, final. Bang! A man fell, blood gushing from his neck. The music stopped completely. Panic erupted. Screams filled the air as people scrambled for the door, knocking down tables and bottles. Some ran half naked into the street, others hid under tables. Outside, the noise reached a police checkpoint less than 500 meters away. The officers had been sitting lazily around their patrol van when they heard the gunfire. "Move! Move!" one of them shouted. In minutes, sirens wailed as the police stormed Rumuola Street like a flood. They fired warning shots into the air. "Everybody down! Nobody move!" The street became a scene from a nightmare, flashing lights, screams, broken glass, and the smell of fear. The officers kicked down doors, dragging men out by their shirts. Nobody was spared, prostitutes, customers, even passers-by. Jide tried to explain, "Officer, we no be cult boys. We just come drink." But the policeman didn't care. "Everybody follow, enter van. You go explain for station." Tega tried to run. One officer chased him down and hit him with the butt of his gun. Emma froze in shock. Hands up, tears running down his face. Within minutes, the police van was full. They drove off, leaving behind blood, broken bottles, and silence. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. 1 killed, 5 arrested in Rumuola brothel shootout. David heard it first from a neighbor who barged into his room holding a newspaper. "David, your friends stay inside Wahala. Police catch all of them for that Rumuola matter." David's hand trembled as he grabbed the paper. There it was, bold letters, black ink, and pain. He read slowly. A suspected cult clash at a brothel in Rumuola left 1 dead and several injured. Police arrested multiple suspects, including 3 young men identified as construction workers. Jide, Tega, Emma, all gone. He sat on the edge of his bed, his head buried in his hands. The walls felt like they were closing in. Mama's words echoed in his head. "When a man follows pleasure blindly, shame will show him the way back home." He had been shown mercy. His friends hadn't. Days later, he visited the police station. The sight broke him. Behind rusted iron bars, his friends sat, faces swollen, clothes torn, eyes hollow. "David," Jide whispered, "tell my mother I'm sorry." Tega just looked at him blankly. The pride, the laughter, the confidence all gone. They were shadows now. The officer on duty told David quietly, "These boys go face big case. Them say they know the cult boys. Maybe even join them. Nobody go believe them innocent." David left the station with tears in his eyes. For the first time, he truly understood sin doesn't always kill fast. Sometimes it just waits, smiling. That night, he sat outside, watching the streetlights flicker. He whispered to himself, "The road of pleasure always ends in pain." He knew now that he wasn't just lucky he had been saved, and he vowed never to return to Rumuola Street again. The months that followed felt longer than years. David threw himself into work. He began taking extra shifts at the construction site. He stopped drinking, stopped chasing women, and started saving money for something meaningful in new life. When his colleagues mocked him for being too serious, he just smiled. They didn't understand that he had looked death in the face not through bullets, but through shame, sickness, and regret. He had learned that discipline was more powerful than desire. One Sunday morning, he took a bus to Diobu to visit Jade's mother. Her small shop stood by the roadside, filled with gari, beans and sachet water. "Mama, good morning," he greeted softly. The woman turned, wiping her hands on her wrapper. When she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. "David," she whispered, "you're the only one who still comes." She brought out an old plastic chair for him. They sat quietly for a while, the noise of passing keek filling the silence between them. "How is Jide?" she finally asked. David swallowed. "He's fine, Ma. I saw him last month when I visited. He said to tell you he's sorry." Mama Jide's lips trembled. She nodded slowly. "I warned him, David. I told him those friends of his would lead him astray." David lowered his head. "We were all foolish, Mama, but God saved me before it was too late." She sighed, looking up at the sky. "May God save the rest. You're a good boy, David. Don't go back to that life." "I won't, Ma," he promised. He also visited Tega's and Emma's homes. Their mothers wept too, each with a different story but the same pain, young sons with bright futures, now trapped behind walls because of one night's mistake. Those visits broke something in David and built something new. He realized that regret doesn't just punish you, it also teaches you mercy. A few months later, David used his savings to enroll in a safety training program for construction workers. He wanted to become a site supervisor, not just a laborer. He studied hard, learned about discipline, leadership, and responsibility. When he got his certificate, he stood before the mirror and whispered, "Mama, I finally made you proud." He could still hear his mother's voice from years ago. When a man follows pleasure blindly, shame will show him the way back home. He smiled sadly. She had been right all along. One evening, on his way from work, his bus took the Rumuola route by accident. Through the window, he saw the familiar red umbrella, and under it a woman. For a moment, he thought it was her. Cynthia. The red dress, the slow smile, the way she flipped her hair. His heart skipped. But when the bus moved closer, he realized it wasn't her, just another woman. Another story waiting to repeat itself with some other foolish man. He looked away quickly, and remembered how his 3 friends were sentenced to 5 years in prison for unlawful possession of firearm. Years passed. David became a foreman, respected, trusted, and calm. He started mentoring young workers, warning them about the streets, about lust, about the dangers of one careless night. Many laughed, the same way his friends once did. He didn't argue. He just smiled and said, "I've seen things. Not every light that shines at night leads home."